Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to get the latest updates.
Welcome to another episode of Soft Cover, where I have Mr. Benedict Parmanand with me. Thank you for joining us. Mr. Parmanand is a journalist, a biographer, and a media entrepreneur. And the book which we will be discussing today is Smash, The Rise of Indian Badminton, Stories of Grit and Triumphs. My first question to you, Mr. Parmanand, is we've seen, to see what you have written about previously, earlier book on C.K. Prahlad, one on Baba Iqbal Singh. These are very different people. They're not essentially sports personalities.
Yeah.
What was the main reason or the motivation of writing a book on Indian badminton? Where did the idea first come about?
Yeah, so because I'm a journalist, long-term training in journalism, so I have an eye for picking stories which have not been told. So untold stories. So even my previous books are about untold stories. So and I'm a avid sports follower. Although I don't play badminton regularly, I used to play earlier. I play more of tennis, but I do follow sports closely. So I realized that there is a bigger story to Indian badminton than what comes out in the media often of a title here and a title there. And there's always a story behind a star. So a star doesn't emerge from out of the blue. So if the Hindu won the silver medal Olympics, so there has to be a force behind that. So once I went into that reading about it, so I discovered that a lot of elements and factors have contributed to where Indian badminton is today.
Okay, sure. The dedication actually speaks about, it says for all those who seek or who find joy in sports. Is this book something which actually helped you find that joy in? I mean, you said you're a tennis player yourself.
Yeah.
Did it help you go back to tennis or maybe even find joy in badminton as such?
No. So I think sports, anybody who follows sports, watches sports, there's an immense joy that one gets out of it. So I think that's the fundamental trait of a sportsman. You find joy in doing it. So I just thought that why narrow it down to dedicating it to someone or somebody in particular, but to the whole, every sports person who enjoys the sport.
Sure. So, just to go into the book and speak about it, this book actually focuses on various aspects, whether it's the players, the association, corporates, or the emergence of sports groups such as the Olympic Gold Quest and the Go Sports Foundation.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to ask, when we actually see these foundations popping up a lot, how do you think, in terms of how you, in the course of writing this book, that organizations such as the Olympic Gold Quest, Go Sports Foundation, CSR, as you said, has really revolutionized, sports funding and helped people, motivate players and help them fund their dreams. How has this changed Indian badminton? Basically CSR funding and the emergence of Olympic Gold Quest and Go Sports Foundation.
So that's a good question, but I have to go back to two important people who have been instrumental in where Indian badminton is today, before the CSR and that came in, say, 7-8 years.
Definitely, yeah.
The first is the BPL group, the Consumer Electronics Group, a very famous BPL brand that we all remember, which are no longer there. So they're based in Bangalore. So they were very excited with how Prakash Padukone went and won the All England in 81. And they realized that badminton needs to be supported. You have one star springs up from nowhere with hardly any support. But then if you need more Prakash Padukones in the system, you need to support them. So, and it wasn't a small support. They gave huge support, and over 10 years continuously. And it went into setting up of the Prakash Padukone Badminton Academy in Bangalore. So that is the foundation, I would say, of the Indian badminton. So he takes a lot of credit. In fact, many players and CEOs tell me that if that had not happened, Indian badminton wouldn't have been where it is today. Okay, so that is for the Prakash Padukone Padukone Badminton Academy. The other important person who's played a very important role is Nimagada Prasad. So I'm sure hardly very few have heard about him, but it was he who was so generous to Gopi Chand that after he won the All England in 201, that he gave him a generous check of 5 crores, which was big money then for him to set up the Gopi Chand Academy. So these two people, I would say, were the initial funders who really got the Indian badminton started. So after that, the Tata Trust stepped in. Once the BPL funding was going away, Tata Trust stepped in Prakash Padukone Academy. They came in a big way. And after that, I think only 2019, we have Infosys Foundation that has came in and put in big money to Prakash Padukone Badminton Academy. This new setup in Bangalore, which is a fabulous setup. I'd gone to visit it. So it is it's a world-class setup.
So this is actually detailed so much, on how from the beginning, from BPL to Mr. N. Prasad.
Let me finish about the CSR. You mentioned Olympic Gold Quest and Go Foundation. So these two have been helped by the CSR funding. So, and not in a big way, actually. Again, these are the individuals who came together to support Indian badminton. And the reason these two have made a big impact is that they were run professionally by sports people, Indian former sports people, and they pushed their agenda in terms of giving Indian sports people an edge in the international arena. So it's very interesting how Indians would do very well in the national level, but then the gap between them and the international was quite stark. So these two foundations, big credit to them, really big credit to them, how they have bridged that gap and given the Indian players, especially say sports science and physical training techniques. So they have bridged that gap. So these two foundations have really played a catalyst role. So if you say PPBA and Gopi Chand Academy were the foundations, so these two have played a catalyst role in not just in badminton, in other sports as well. So I would say that.
Sure. I mean, you detailed it right now, and you said they've played a catalyst, whether it's sports science, or the other aspects of it. Would it be an overreach, or do you think it would be, right to say that they have the potential of maybe revolutionizing Indian badminton and maybe Indian sports, take it further? Or do you think it's too soon to say that right now?
Oh, these two foundations?
Yes.
So I think I would say they have kind of revolutionized already.
Already.
So, and I think they also need more funding from businesses today to take whatever they are doing to the next level. I think they've really done wonders.
Sure. Coming to the association side, your book speaks about that a lot. Whether it's Jwala Gutta, who says, from the outside, the Badminton Association looks fine, but from the inside, there are many problems with it. In fact, I think she even calls it rotten. Mr. Morton Frost, who is a former badminton champion himself, who you also thanked in the acknowledgement, said that he spoke about some infrastructural frameworks which had to be changed. He said coaches need to be paid better. You need a stronger infrastructure. At present, have you? I mean, if you have, do you think there has been a change from an association perspective and ministry-wise, the sports ministry, and what is required to, let's say, really take Indian badminton to the next step forward?
Wow. So you mentioned Jwala Gutta.
Yeah.
So Jwala is, I mean, every sport has one person who's like outspoken.
Yeah.
Who doesn't mince words. Okay. So a sport needs that. And she's one such person. So she may be quite strong in her words. And when she mentioned that from outside it is beautiful and inside it's rotten, it's not for any association, but it's for the whole of Indian badminton. So she was referring to that. Okay, then Morten Frost. Morten Frost has played a very important role because he was such a good friend of Prakash Padukone.
Sure.
That he gave his time and continued. Even I met him as recently as last year. He comes and his role is interesting. So he helps junior players transition to senior players. Okay, so it's a very Indian problem. Where there are many Indian tennis players and badminton players who go on and win singles as junior players in big competitions. But the same players, after a couple of years or 3 years, they are not able to make it at the senior level. So what is that problem? So there is a very interesting problem there which needs to be plugged. And Morten Frost has been playing that transition role. So that's an interesting element. So, but you asked about?
What I asked about was what is required, let's say, from Indian badminton, the administrative side, for what requires change from the administration side, from the ministry, the sports ministry, to really aid the sport.
So this is a classic problem which all Indian sports have. So excessive administrative control, and
Sure.
Administrative control not by the competent former players who run the academy, but by either politicians or bureaucrats. So I would say is that the model which Supreme Court has mandated BCCI to follow, I think that should be followed in all Indian sports, where the former sportsmen, they form the core of the administration. So not the bureaucrats or those who have vested interests, businessmen who have vested interests in sport, or politicians who have vested interests. Like today, Indian badminton president is the chief minister of Assam. So how much time will he give for Indian badminton? So he, by himself, should resign and hand it over to somebody. Hand it over to Prakash Padukone or Gopi Chand or somebody, Vimal Kumar. So we need massive reforms in Indian sports administration, and badminton is no exception to that. But where I would pick a point is that the aspiration level of Indian badminton is very low. Aspiration is huge, but the commitment to make it happen is very low. I'll give you an example. Well, they say that we need an Olympic medal this year, 2021, gold. We want a gold. But then you see, for domestic sports, the prize money earmarked is only 2 crores. For prize money over several tournaments, and for all the players, singles, doubles, runner-up, what is 2 crores today? It's nothing. So how do you motivate domestic badminton players? The sports has to be, the prize money has to be really good to motivate them. So, and there are a lot of talk about decentralizing power to state associations and things like that. So we need in all Indian sports radical reforms. In fact, I've mentioned it in this book about the code of ethics, sports ethics in 2017, which was brought about. So how much of that has been implemented today? Hardly.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's resistance from surprisingly resistance from the association board members themselves.
Sure.
So where the players and the coaches, they want these changes. So there's some logjam in the middle, which is stopping Indian sports from really flourishing. You do find few stars here and there, but the whole system needs to be aligned. This is a common message which Prakash Padukone and Gopi Chand and everybody says, that there is no alignment of various elements in Indian badminton, particularly. So the states and the center, the district level sports, the sports medicine, the health, nutrition, there's no alignment. There's over centralization in one place. There is no enough funds is a huge issue.
No, actually, it's quite interesting to use the word alignment, because it encompasses everything, as I think the book also mentions that whether it is why we only focusing on a few players to take it and not, let's say, also focusing on the junior players, the gap from making it to the juniors and being successful in the seniors, as you mentioned earlier. Even coaches, as you said, one chapter says, where are the coaches? Why are we relying on certain coaches in that alignment? If you start at the grassroots level, then maybe you will have a better chance at flourishing in the sport. So that's quite an interesting aspect you mentioned of alignment. I wanted to ask you one more thing in this spectrum of alignment. Sorry,
just going there, I would like to recognize the work being done on junior players today.
Sure.
So we very interestingly, we have a good contingent of junior players today.
Okay.
So the book mentions that how we have 5 out of top 20 or 8 out of top 20 in the world junior players are in India today. So we are doing well. But again, there is this, and I've discussed in the book about the challenge for these junior players to go from junior to senior. It's not senior. Yeah, it's not the point that I mentioned earlier. It's also that when they're junior, they get fully paid for. So the both, I mean, particularly PPBA, so it fully funds junior players. But once they want to move from junior to senior, they have to fund for themselves. And the fund which the association provides or whoever provides, it's very meager. And participating in international tournaments is very expensive. So that is that point. I mean, I don't want to take away from what these associations are doing for junior players. They're doing a good job. We do even have Lakshya Sen, who won the junior singles in 2017.
So would you say then, I mean, I think, this gap is also something which is something where it's also financial based, the gap in terms of making it in the juniors and the seniors? Would that be correct to say?
Yes, it is hugely financial. It is financial. In fact, Vimal Kumar, who is Indian former national coach and now the head coach of PPBA, he's very clear on that. I've quoted him in the book that when players in the junior level, they get fully funded. Okay. So when to move to the senior, the transition, you need lots of expense and very few can afford it.
Sure.
Yeah. It's largely financial, not so much the talent.
In this spectrum of alignment, and also now speaking of the financial aspect, the book also touches upon, the Badminton Premier League, and its emergence in India, From what you wrote about it, how has this changed Indian badminton? What are the changes the Badminton Premier League has brought about in Indian badminton? And would you say this is something which could maybe cover that financial gap to hit juniors to seniors?
Yes. I would say just like how IPL has played a big role for Indian domestic players, similarly, Badminton League is playing similar role. So it's almost the same. So financially as well, to some extent. But then if you have shortlisted, say, 15, 20 players who can go on to become world number ones, world number twos. But for them, this is a huge diversion. I mean, distraction rather. This is a huge distraction. So they can participate on and off, but it is a distraction. So there has to be like a classical and popular.
Yes.
You have two elements in everything. So the classical has to be nurtured separately.
Sure. This is also similar to maybe, as since you said you're a tennis player, that there's separate space for Grand Slams and then something like the IPTL, which Mr. Bhupati started. Yeah. That's again, like you said, that's a classic. It's very different from the classic form of the game.
Yeah.
Speaking about the game, and we're talking about players. One thing which the book which actually touches on, which is very interesting, is training techniques. How Mr. Prakash Padukone at that time removed the fear of the Chinese. When he went to Indonesia. And he really brought about changes in his training technique and the way he played. Mm-hmm. And the book also says, don't emulate one person because that won't work for you. Yeah. So I think it says that, even Prakash Padukone tells the students, don't adopt one technique, but adopt the best of all. Mr. Purela Gopichand, the power of visualization and meditation, how that's incorporated in the game. Could you tell us a bit about, some interesting aspects of training techniques which you came upon while writing this book, which may not actually mention this book, or anything which struck out to you?
Yeah. So Indians have a very unique talent, which not many have, which is the Indians are very wrist-oriented. They have a very, they can play a very stealth game because of their wrist ability to use their wrist. So not many others are able to do that. So Prakash is an example of how he went on and learned other elements to be a champion. He learned stamina from the Europeans, and he learned speed in Indonesia and Southeast Asia from Chinese players. So you need to combine all the three. But what is very interesting, which Prakash says, that you never give up your unique technique. So everybody has a unique technique. Okay, you should not give that up. You can go and get better at a few things. Get better stamina, get better speed, but you retain your uniqueness. So that is a very interesting thing I found from Prakash, which he tells everybody. So there are other techniques as well, which is Vimal Kumar has been a successful coach. So he's kind of different from Prakash. So that comes under the coaching, not so much in the playing part. So in the different coaching techniques. So I'll come to that when you ask about coaching.
Sure. I wanted to ask you, because you said don't, and this is, don't adopt different techniques, but don't your own unique style you should understand. And it's also then merging what you're about to mention. Is it then the coach's job to help the player find their unique style, or have there been times when the player figures it out themselves?
I think it's a coach's unique contribution. He identifies the unique style of a player and helps him to refine it even further, and not lose it by trying to focus on other aspects of your game. So I think a good coach will always focus on getting your unique strength. Otherwise, how will you differentiate? Every player is different. How will you be a different player? Yeah.
So is that also a coach's eye, where they can then see each player individually, and for them then finding that?
Yes.
So then could you tell us what Mr. Vimal Kumar, like, style of coaching, and how would that be different? I mean, as you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah. So Vimal believes that you should not train a player to death. So, so hard work, hard work, hard work. Everybody says hard work, hard work. So hard work is not the end all. So if you have a unique strength, you have a great talent, the training has to be smart.
Sure.
And you need to take good breaks, enough breaks in between. And the training has to be smart. So that's how very interesting anecdote is how Saina, she temporarily moved from Gopichand Academy to Bangalore. And under Vimal, she understood a different style of training. So Vimal asks a player, what do you want? Okay, so typically players don't get asked, what do you want? Coaches tell you what to do.
What to do,
yeah. So these are very radical, different approaches. So typically an Asian form of coaching is coaches tell you what to do. Okay. Europeans particularly, they want the players to know what they want. And then they intervene and help them with what they want. Okay. So that's where when Saina came to Bangalore, she immediately was able to beat her rough patch and come up with, she went on to win the many tournaments after that. And she regained her confidence, and later she went back to Gopichand Academy. Yeah.
So would it be correct to say a blend of the two might be, different training styles, or a blend of the two might be good, or it really then, if it's a unique training style, it also then changes person to person?
No, some universal facts don't change.
Sure.
So I think giving the player a personality. So don't make the player into a student with no face, a robot. Okay, that's very important for a sports person, and bring joy into, again, the word joy is very important. So
and goes back to your dedication as well.
Yeah. So how do you make training a joy? So training is seen as drudgery. People, I'm sure most of the players don't love getting trained. They go there because they have to. So how to make training, love training, is when you get the maximum output.
Sure. That's actually a very interesting and nice way of motivating people.
Yeah.
The book also, and I'm just coming back into, as someone who is a tennis player, it looks at the relation between Indian tennis and Indian badminton, and says there are certain lessons which Indian tennis can take from Indian badminton. Yeah. Because while Indian tennis has done well in the doubles format, in the singles, essentially, besides Sania Mirza, now Yuki Bhamri, initially also Somdev Devvarman, we really haven't, Leander Pace obviously in between, but we really haven't had a standout singles player in Indian tennis. And one of the things you have said is that Indian tennis needs to be made more affordable.
Yeah.
So could you explain this? I mean, like how does this done? Like how is this done? And is it the same format which one adopts in badminton?
So one biggest myth which Indian badminton has busted is that Indian mentality or Indian perception that Indians are not physically fit enough to go and win singles.
Yeah.
Okay. So that has been on Indians' mind for a long, long time. And that still persists in Indian tennis. But Indian badminton, Prakash Padukone and Gopichand, and later Srikanth, and in singles, Sindhu and Saina, they have proved that it is not the case. So they have burst the myth that Indian players are not good enough, not physically fit enough to go and win singles. So. If
I may also interrupt, I think the book mentions that Mahesh Bhupati said that Indians don't have their DNA to...
Correct. And I was very careful. It's quoted in Times of India. So it's not quoted out of context.
Context.
Yeah. So that's very important element which I highlighted in the book. So the affordable part, yes. So if you see, I've given example from Goldmine Effect, the book which I referred to. In fact, that was one of my inspirations for writing this book. So he has taken given examples of 6 sports in the world, how they have been able to produce world players without having the resources.
Here is Rasmus Ankersen. Is that when you said he, you mean that?
Yeah, Rasmus Ankersen. So, in fact, one of the reasons that motivated me to write this book is why not Indian badminton be the 7th gold mine effect. So it nearly fits the bill. So that was one of the reasons. But coming back to Indian tennis. So, so in that book, Rasmus mentions how, say, a small club in Russia, okay, have produced 50% of the top 200 world ranking players, women ranking players. So how did they do that? So because they made it affordable to anybody to come and learn, or it's sponsored by the association or the state to some extent. So the reason why Indian badminton came up through the Prakash Padukone Academy initially was that most of them were sponsored by the academy. Okay, whereas Indian tennis, although it had a much earlier start, which with Vijay Amritraj, and he set up an academy for tennis, Bats Academy, I think. So, but they lost out because they didn't make it affordable. It was remained an elite sport. So it's still today an elite sport. So that's why you don't see an Indian men's singles player scraping through top 100 and getting out within no time.
Yeah, sure. That's quite interesting. I just coming towards the end of the interview, one thing which I want to ask you is, because the book, it sheds on so much, but I think in the end, it also says that the road ahead is bumpy. Yeah. It's a bumpy road ahead. Could you explain to our viewers, why did you decide to leave the book on that note, and why is the road ahead bumpy?
One of the key things for Indian future of Indian badminton, when I say future, 3 years, 5 years down the line, is that India has still not figured out how to develop domestic coaches. Okay, so we don't even today have, you can say, 10 coaches who are of international caliber.
Sure.
Okay, so we have not invested in that. So that is a huge factor in the future of that will determine the
road
future of
ahead, yeah. Especially since you said that it is a coach who helps train, yes. That uniqueness comes out.
Yeah. So that's one factor. The second factor is again politicization and unprofessional way of dealing with the between the associations, with the Badminton Association of India and sports academies, things like that. So, but having said that, some of the coaches, senior coaches, now say that it is much better. Badminton Association of India is much more open to reforms and much more open to supporting players and things like that. So it is there, but it's not enough. So why it is not enough? Because in the book I've said that we are, when we say that India has become a powerhouse, what is it? It is, say at now 8th or 9th in the world. Okay, 10, 12 years back, it was not even close to 10. Okay, so it is 8th and 9th rank. So what is the future? What is our objective? So we should be at least in top 3. We should be in the top 3. How do we get to top 3? So if we have that goal in mind, then it is obviously not just bumpy, but it is heavily potholed, the road. Okay.
Sure.
So we need to set many things straight. So one is the gap between the aspiration and the process and funding has to be bridged. Excuse me. So that 2 crore prize money is
too less.
Not less, it's an insult. It's an insult. It should not, it should be, the prize money for domestic should be really huge. And we need to set up academies professionally run in every small town. At least 200 towns in India, we need to set up. And also support former players who are setting up badminton academies, support them by not putting too many rules. I think India loves constraining with too many rules and how this association has to function, how this academy has to function. We just leave it open. They'll find find how to get the best out of it. What else is a bumpy road? So basically, if we manage to do these 2-3 simple things, and one is a thing about the coaches, another about funding, and the three
and the bridge,
professionalizing the sport. Sport administration. So these 3, if we can get it even 50% right, so we should be able to be in the top 3.
So we've actually ended this on a fairly positive note, because we've found that it is a bumpy, if not maybe full of pothole road ahead, but we have a roadmap which we can, let's say, then really reach the next level where, there's certain steps so that when the vision is there, it's easier to follow. Thank you so much, Mr. Paramanand, for joining us and for this very insightful book, which hopefully everyone will have joy in reading as they find joy in sports. Yeah. Stay tuned to theprint.in and follow us on our social media channels.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Radhika, for this opportunity. Thank you.